Hi, it's Mike again, your colleague and student in life and leadership. As we talked about on our last session about burnout, one of the things as I did more and more around coaching around burnout and helping others and supporting myself as well, I found that a common theme that was prevalent was a lack of self-compassion. I mean, self-compassion that just kind of blew my mind. I was like, "What is that?" Compassion. I think we all often have compassion for others, those that we care about, those that are suffering. But the one thing we forget to do is we forget to have compassion for ourselves. Now, I know some of you are thinking, especially if you're like me, where it's kind of one of those things where I was like, that's just foo-foo, and it's one of those things where it's only going to cause me to be lazy or not, not holding myself accountable. But I'll tell you, it's different. Compassion, when you think about compassion, it's often given when people are suffering. And we're really good at it when others are suffering oftentimes, but we're horrible at it when we ourselves are suffering, if we're going through a hard time. And this is where having self compassion is so important. And so when we talk about burnout, when we talk about any depression, anxiety, any other difficult situations you might be going through, life circumstances, whatever that might look like, you have a sick relative, or you're dealing with situations at home, stressors with your children, something like that. It can definitely be an opportunity where self-compassion can really help you do much better. There's a great amount of research done by Dr. Kristen Neff, Neff, and I highly encourage you to take a look at it. But she breaks it down into three components. The first component being self-kindness. Of course, talking to yourself in a kind way, talking to yourself like you would talk to your friend. How many of us, if we talk to our friends like we talk to ourselves, would not have any friends because they would think we're so mean and harsh? So think about the tone that you talk to yourself when you're going through a hard time. The second component is common humanity. Just remembering that others are suffering too. You're not the only one. And that a lot of times when we're going through hard times, we isolate ourselves. But it's so, so important that we reach out and we get support, we get empathy, the things that we really need to help us get through these difficult times. It's so, so important to have that common humanity of knowing that others are suffering too, and that they might be suffering similarly, and knowing that you're not alone in all this. And then finally, mindfulness. A lot of times when it comes to all these emotions, they can definitely take off, as we talked about earlier with emotional intelligence, the amygdala. It can really get us into trouble because our emotions will ramp up and then it'll spiral into a very, very negative aspect. And so that's where being mindful of our emotions, being mindful of the negative ones, our negativity bias. It's funny how our brains are wired, our minds are wired to always focus on the negative but not see the positive. And so remembering that we need to take a moment to really step back, be mindful of our emotions, and really think about what's really helpful, what's not helpful, and really take the things that are positive and the helpful things and use them to help support ourselves when we're going through that tough time. So remembering with self-compassion, it's all about self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. And it takes time, and it's intentional, and it takes effort. And trust me when I say it's not natural. It actually goes against how I am to myself. I'm very hard on myself. I'm my own worst critic. Believe me when I say I beat up on myself on a regular basis, but it's because of the self-compassion, thankfully, that has helped me become healthier. And by being self-compassionate, actually, I've been able to be more compassionate towards others. Because if you don't have compassion, and if you don't show that compassion to yourself, it's really hard to be compassionate towards other people as well. And so it's funny because when I've had leaders who are very, very hard and very, very mean or toxic towards others, what I found is it's oftentimes because that's the way they are towards themselves. And for me, even as a parent, I found that the more self-compassion I've become, the more compassion I've been able to be with my children, with my wife, with those around me. So remembering self-compassion is really important. It's something that we all oftentimes need to get better practicing. And it's not about just blowing things off. It's not about holding ourselves accountable. It's not about just foo-fooing things away. But really, when we're going through a hard time, it's really about how do we best take care of ourselves, and how do we be kind to ourselves in a way that we would show that same compassion towards someone else that's suffering. Great. I hope this was helpful, and leave any comments, and thank you for subscribing, and definitely look forward to our next session.